What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today when I talk to you about Palantir, I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on what really moved it and why we will be seeing all-time highs next week. So I want to go over all the things that you need to know, but first make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So Palantir did go up 4.65%, absolutely kick-ass way to close out a week. 106 the low, 112 the high. Over the last 5 days, it did go up 17.53%. A couple of different attributing factors to this good momentum today. One is just simply a lot of good tariff updates, and this whole tariff war back and forth is starting to de-escalate right in front of our eyes. So overnight we did have pretty much China extending a olive branch, or whatever the hell you want to call it, by potentially reducing their 125% tariffs to 30% in some actual circumstances. So very optimistic. And then over the last 48 hours, we've seen the states do similar type of stuff. So the market is feeling very comfortable to get back into equities. And so big money, for the most part, money markets, there's about $6.91 trillion sitting in money markets. And they've been sitting there waiting for kind of the fear to subside. And at the end of the day, with all the updates, it is time to get in. In addition to that, though, you did also have some good data points today. Michigan consumer sentiment. Market was somewhat iffy going into this because the last 5 reports did prompt a pullback in the broader market, but it came in at 52.2. Forecast was 50.8. Very optimistic, shows a little bit more of a temporary reversal for that. Still does show obviously some inflation potentially estimated to come, but nonetheless, very nice data. And even like I said, with the tariff news that combined, big money decided to get in. So you saw a lot of big transactions occurring on the secondary market and also the dark pool above $100,000. So big money was massively getting in today. So let me know your viewpoint on that. And like I said, even on the dark pool. So dark pool transactions, there was a couple of ones that just happened roughly 5 minutes ago. So 5.08, 1.3, 2.1, and so forth. So a lot of big transactions. Even right here, 19.6 million, 16.9. So like I said, just it is now on a lot of people's radar. And this is something I did mention in my last video, that during my last video, there was a lot of fear still kind of starting to surge during for tariffs and so forth. But I did mention that it was a win-win scenario for Palantir. Very little downside, a lot of upside. And this is exactly how it did play out for Palantir. Even aside from that, a lot of my other data point videos where I go over what's influencing it, honestly, if you look at the true data, like, it tells you no BS on where it is going to go. And for those of you that have been really following my Palantir videos, you would know when it was sitting at 70, I mentioned that it was going to go to 125. And lo and behold, it did. I called that well before any of the analysts, before Daniel Ives, before anyone. And so essentially, it's, again, if you follow the data points, it tells you exactly everything that you need to know. But aside from that, though, going over some of the data points, today we did have shorts return 367,000 shares. I think in general, just Palantir shorts have PTSD. I've kind of explained this in the past, is that even in times of fear, Palantir shorts have doubled down, but then they lose their asses. Anyone betting against Palantir has lost a significant amount. And so I think right now, even during this time frame, they were scared to get in on Palantir because it's a beast. It can reverse anytime and all that fun jazz. But 2.54% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 55 million shares. Cost to borrow minimum is negative though, so you do see a broker out there physically paying people to short Palantir, but still it's not really amounting to anything. So let me know your thoughts on that. And just for clarity, I'm bringing this up more so for an like analysis tool and so forth, not because it's a squeeze play. But moving over to the options, you do have 359,000 in calls, 103,000 in puts. 47% of all the options being done today are optimistic in nature, and roughly a grand total of 463 million in premiums today. So huge stuff. And based on the put/call ratio, it looks as though there is still a anticipation for more upside. And again, with a lot of the data points I'm going to be talking on, a lot of which is pointing to all-time highs coming. Based on the bulls that did get in, there's a consensus going into next week for it to be at that 120 to 125 range. So pretty much on the kind of peak of that all-time high. Just on a side note, all-time high is $125.41. But bears are anticipating going into next week for it to be roughly around that 103 to 105 range. So still, based on all this, there's a lot more upside anticipated. But with it closing at 112, it is now trading between this R3 and this R2. 102.84 is going to be the next strong support, and then 129 is going to be the next strong target/resistance. And that 129 does match ultimately with this right over here. So the Elliott wave technicals, and this in among itself has been also very, very accurate. So it does have a pivot point of 89.16. For as long as it is above that, then it is anticipated in the short term to get to between the 127 and 136 range. Again, insinuating all-time highs. And based on at least the latest analyst ratings, so you do have ultimately a new one that did come out today, 105 hold UBS, Carl, who has a 60% success rating, then you had an 80, 90, and so forth. But still, as a consensus, $93.69 is that price target, representing a 16.93% downside. But given the recent price action, and if you kind of subtract a lot of these crappy ones recently that were just merely piggybacking off of the tariff fear, if you kind of subtract that, it does get back to that triple digit. So at the end of the day, like I said, I think the writing is on the wall that this stock is going to hit new all-time highs for this week. Big money is really betting on it kind of hitting. And even going back over here for a second, so the bulls, based on the options, are anticipating a little bit more upside as well based on what I mentioned. But I think at the end of the day, if we kind of go back over here, so there is still a consensus for it to be above 125, just those are random pockets. So 140 seems to be kind of the peak for next week, but 150 for May 16th, 2025. So like I said, a lot of the data points I did bring up are specific to pretty much this upcoming week. So the week ending, when is it? I'll give you a quick thought on that. So week ending May the 2nd. So that's still a pretty good return on investment even at this stage in the game. But bigger picture, big money is betting that it'll be roughly around that 150. But on the actual chart itself, honestly, the only negative thing to really bring up about this is the fact that it is rather overbought, and it is kind of overdone a little bit based on that, at least in the short term. But as stocks do correct, such as what has been happening with Palantir and the broader market, it is somewhat normal. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. So I think right now it is in breakout territory, and it should be, like I said, hitting all-time highs sooner rather than later. So let me know your thoughts on Palantir. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think it's overvalued? What's your kind of 2 cents on all that? One final thing, pop over to my Patreon. I give buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. So definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.